What's up, guys? So welcome to this new video. Today we will be reviewing our Tony Robbins books and Tony Robbins, which is Awaken the Giant Within. This is the book that I have. It's in Italian. It's written how to improve your mental, physical and financial state. However, this is the Italian version of the Awaken the Giant Within. Even though the titles are a bit different, this is the same book. So we are gonna have a review of this book today. So the book is divided mainly in stages, where will be discussed the patterns of different aspects of life, the decisions we make, the forces that induce our decisions, which are the pain and the pleasure, the beliefs and the neuroassociative conditionings, the modules, the words that we use, the questions we make, the meanings that we assign to these questions, and the challenges. So if we are reading this book, we start from the assumption that we want to improve ourselves. And to do this, we need to have a change that sustains over time. This is, however, only possible if we raise our standards, meaning we raise the starting point of our expectations. Two is the change of the limiting beliefs, because obviously it's not possible to achieve something that you do not believe it's possible. And number three, we have changing our strategy, which is copying other models or changing the actions that we take. So what we seek to achieve from this book is the mastery of 5 fundamental aspects of life. These 5 are emotions, the body, relationship, finance, and time. So the emotional mastership, what does it mean? It means changing how we feel and the meaning we attach to things so that we do not feel prey or controlled by our emotions or external events, and thus we take control and we take responsibility for our life. This also includes falling prey to drugs, alcohol, and other addictions. We have to get back in control of our life. Physical mastership means mastering one's physiology and the energy, which also extends to the physical health and the mental health. Number 3 is relationship mastership, which means establishing stronger relationships with the people that you value the most and how to add value to these relationships. We then have the financial mastership, which means achieving an existence beyond survival and changing the attitude towards money from being an end to being the means. For this step, it is important to know how to grow, how to preserve, and how to invest the money to achieve concrete goals. Then we have the mastership of time, which leads you to manipulate the element of time by making it your ally with compound interests and abandon the immediate gratification for long-term success. We then move on to decisions, since every action we take consistently determines the course of our lives. But what underlines our actions? It must be understood that we are never victim of our circumstances, but that the circumstances are created by man. What makes an action constant is then the commitment applied to that action. Therefore, raising the standards serve precisely to carve a commitment in stone to ensure that the commitment is repeated over time. For many, this task is really too difficult, but the use of decision-making power gives you the reins of your future. At any moment, we can make the decision that improve our future without having to wait. We can do anything right now. A quote here in the book indicates, "Nothing can resist the human will that will put even its very own existence on the line for the achievement of its declared intention." That means that if you really decide that you can do something, no one can stop you when you are in that physical state. There are 3 decisions that we make at every moment that determine our actions. And these decisions are what you notice and therefore what you're focusing on, what you feel as a result of what you see, and so what you think the meaning of your feelings is, and then what you do in response to the event's meaning, so to satisfy your needs. Everything in fact is determined by these 3 questions at any given time, which is why 2 people saying the same exact thing can have completely different interpretations of the same event. In this moment, however, your mind makes decisions on its own, and this causes the so-called Niagara syndrome, where a person basically is stuck in a little boat and he doesn't know in which direction he should row, but is unconsciously pushed along by the current, which are the events of life, until they realize and they hear the sound of the waterfall when it's basically too late to save themselves, and they are basically swept away by the waterfalls, which symbolizes life itself. Our unconscious system works with 5 elements that are the beliefs, the references, which are often shaped by the environment around us, the values, the 3 decision-making questions, and the emotional status. By changing this, we can change ourselves. However, nothing happens until we decide to act, which is why it is imperative that we absolutely decide who we will become each and every day. What will control our action most often are, however, pain and pleasure, or to be more precise, the beliefs about what we think will bring us pain and what we think will bring us pleasure. If we do not change these beliefs, we will continue to suffer and we will continue to endure until we are forced to change due to our circumstances. So pain does not happen because of an event, but it is the interpretation of that event that brings us pain. This is also indicated by the fact that some people find physical pain pleasurable. However, we react instinctively rather than rationally, and whenever we are in an intense state, whatever is happening in that moment is associated with pain or is associated with pleasure. Like a scientist made an experiment where he was basically feeding a dog by ringing a bell to make the dog drool. So by continuing to feed the dog by ringing the bell, the dog eventually started to drool just from the association of the ring of the bell, even though the food was not provided to him. So the human brain actually works with some similar chemical responses. To control pain, we must sometimes remind ourselves that it is not the pain itself that stops us, but the fear that we might suffer, so by the perception. But sometimes the pain is never realized, so we must convince ourselves that the fear is irrational. When you feel stuck, you must in fact analyze what you're putting off as a result of that, asking yourself these questions. Why am I not doing it? What pain am I associating with doing this action? And analyze what pleasure you have received from indulging in this action in the past. Then ask yourself what might happen in the long run and how you would feel if you decided to act in this moment, act instantly. Once these questions are asked, sometimes the answers are crystal clear and you just take action. Unfortunately, credences often play a nasty trick. Since we don't consciously decide which credences we get, they are many times based on misinterpretations, and once they become a belief, we forget even the fact that they are only an interpretation and we never even dare to question them again. Beliefs are then supported by our references that we learn over time from our experiences. To change our beliefs, it will therefore be necessary to validate the origin and the validity of our references and to tear down those that hinder us. With sufficient emotional intensity, the body can register even imaginary references as an experience. For example, before 1954, it was considered impossible to run a mile in under 4 minutes, and no one had ever done it. Probably, no one even tried because they thought it was impossible. But after an athlete decided that this reference wasn't true, he undertook by himself to break the record, and after him, the next year, 37 other people were able to achieve the same result, and 300 even more the year after that. We must therefore take charge of our own interpretations, and if we decided to interpret our efforts as futile, we fall prey to the learned incapacity. That is, the belief that we are not capable of doing something, and the solution lies in starting to act on very small things that we have control over and go from there. We then have to associate pain with the old beliefs by establishing doubt. You have certainly had some absolute beliefs in the past where you were 100% sure of, and you would have defended this belief to your death, but now instead you have changed your mind about it. When you try to change someone's opinion about a belief, they will often feel attacked because the belief undermines the person's identity, and the body tries in every possible way to remain consistent with their own beliefs. The next step is then based on the Japanese tradition of Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. Kaizen means the practice of being aware that every day we do something, however small, that leads us to improve little by little, and thus a continuous commitment to maintain a higher quality of life. Day after day, we have to establish new reinforcing references and demolish the negative ones we have been conditioned to. To take a small or a big action that lead to change, we have to decide what we really want and what prevents us from doing it right now. 2, we have to associate strong pain with the default status, the status we are in right now, and get clarity about your beliefs, our beliefs, so that we don't have conflicting ones. At this point, to force ourselves to act, we have to cross a certain threshold of pain, where the reality of not changing is so painful that our action becomes just unjustifiable and we are urged to act. If not from our beliefs and our references, the pain must come from punishment we inflict ourselves. Number 3, we have to interrupt the limiting behavior often by removing the associations of secondary benefits that can create doubt. A good way is to give the body what it asks in exaggerated proportion that it no longer wants it. So if we interrupt this limiting behavior enough times, we can then change it. Another way is to use the mind to change the memories of the associations we carry with us, as if the memories were movies and we were the directors, where we can change the intensity, the color, the size, the speed, and even more of these memories we want to get rid of until they become intangible memories. Number 4, we must create an enhancing alternative, a substitute, otherwise we will revert back to the default status. Number 5, we have to repeat these new beliefs until it becomes constant and create a system to reward yourself when you achieve these goals. Number 6, you must then test yourself, and if you fail, you must start over from the first step and make sure that you only associate pain with the old modules and that the new ones have no associated pain. To make a recap about everything, what we do is therefore a consequence of either avoiding pain or seeking pleasure, but we can change our minds about what leads us to one and what the other. The behavior we have is not the result of our abilities, but it's our state of mind. To change our state of mind, we can change two things, which are physiology and the focus. You have to identify those things that lead you to have a change in physiology, and you have to write them down on a sheet of paper or somewhere where you can keep note for it. For example, I feel more energetic when I stay with a straight back, I have broad shoulders, and I breathe deeply. Or I feel more energetic also when I tap the sole of my foot very quick. Or I feel happy when I think of a person laughing in a funny and uncontrolled way. So emotion is therefore created by motion. What we focus on is what we get. So to control what you focus on, you have to ask the right empowering questions. We indicated earlier that the actions we take are the consequences of our perceptions, which are in turn a consequence of the questions we're asking ourselves. In moments of crisis, we have to ask ourselves these questions. What can I learn from this situation? Instead of, why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? Remember that we are intelligent beings, and we will find answer to the questions we ask ourselves if we ask them repeatedly. And it is immediately clear which answer is empowering and which isn't. So the mind works by consciously removing the things it focuses on. To do this, it creates habits. And since it works by exclusion, thinking positively automatically blocks the fleet of negative thoughts. This can be explained by the RAS, which is the reticular activating system, which is a part of the brain that controls the focus. I will give you now an example. For the next 10 seconds, try to look around the room for anything that you see that is of color red. Now go. Now look at the screen and tell me what you remember of the color green. As if by magic you ignored everything that was green because you focused on something else. We can harness the same power for other things. So ask often to yourself what you can do right now to improve your life, and your RIS will automatically focus on answers to that. It is also important to take control of the mental dictionary and the words that you often unconsciously decide to use, but which influence the intensity and with it the experience that you have. So the words you apply to an experience become the experience itself. Just think that some Native American tribes don't even know what hate or what lies are, precisely because these words don't even exist in their language. And on the other hand, the more you use the words like hate, the more you will feel hateful. Studies have shown in fact, and they have confirmed that the words we use have a biochemical effect on us that produce stronger or weaker feelings depending on the intensity of the words we use. So there are therefore only 4 ways we can deal with emotions, and they are to avoid them, but this prevents you from opening up and finding solutions or trying new things, and you remain then paralyzed. Number 2 is denying them, but this will let them magnify and intensify, and they will worsen over time until you have to deal with them. Number 3 is you enter into competition where it becomes a part of you and you start to compare yourself with others who has it worse. Number 4 is learning how to use them. Emotions are in fact just signals that the body is telling us that something is going wrong. If we learn to use and identify our emotions, they become useful and are no longer harmful. Emotions are therefore calls to action, which try to save you by sometimes creating discomfort. Negative emotions generally indicate that something must be changed or that an action must be taken to change the circumstances. And there are 6 steps to achieve this emotional mastery. Number 1 is identify what you feel. Are you really angry, or are you just disappointed, or are you just hurt? Or perhaps you're repulsed or you're uncomfortable. Number 2 is recognize and appreciate the emotion as a signal that your body is giving to try and help you in signaling that you need to do something to feel better. So emotion is like a defense mechanism. Number 3 is you have to look for the message that the emotion is trying to convey and ask reinforcing question. 4 is trust that you can go through with this emotion because you have already been through this in the past and you can deal with it again. And number 5 is ensure yourself that you can manage this emotion now and also in the future by drawing up a plan to change the perceptions, changing the way you communicate, and changing the actions you take to deal with this emotion. Number 6 is then excite yourself by changing your physiology and prepare yourself to take action. Most fears are rarely realized. It is not important how you act. The important thing is that you make the decision and you start. And the how will come by itself, thanks to the reticular system, which identifies the important things and brings us a solution because the mind has registered that as an important thing. The same happens with our goals. In order not to be affected by the Niagara syndrome we described earlier, we have to set goals on 4 aspects of life. The first is the personal development, which is the physical, the mental, the social state, the masteries that we have, and the spirituality. The second is the economic and the career goals. And this is regarding your income, regarding your company, regarding your pension, the security, or the budget that you have. Number 3 is leisure and adventure. You have to be motivated enough and you have to give yourself some pleasure every now and then. And number 4 is the contribution to the world. What can you do to others beyond something that is for yourself? So you must then take these notes and put them down in order of importance and start with the one that's at the top of the list. You must also give a realistic time limit within which you have to achieve it, or it will just remain a dream on paper and it will no longer be a goal. For each goal that you undertake, you must be clear about why you want to achieve it, and the cost of failing to achieve it must be very, very painful. If you're not able to push yourself to act, it is only because you do not have a strong enough motive or you have to look for better ones. When you're about to reach a goal, then you have to write down the next one right away so that you don't lose momentum and you keep making commitments from which you cannot back out. The habits that got you this far will be not the same ones that you must have to achieve your goals. So ask yourselves what kind of habits, what kind of actions, what kind of beliefs you must have to get the results you want. And if you don't have an answer, then copy the ones who have already been successful in that goal. Once you build habits, then you have to identify yourself in that way so you remain constant and consistent with your interpretation of yourself. Tony then here decides to propose challenges where for 1 week you have to force yourself to strangle any negative thoughts at birth by using these 6 steps we described earlier and the body emotions, the physiology, to control the moods and the actions instead of reacting unconsciously. So you must also avoid asking debilitating questions, and you cannot start this challenge unless you're convinced that you will be able to do it and that you will apply yourself and get it done every single day. And if you fail, you will start from day 1. This exercise enables you to take control of being able to make effective assessments through 5 elements, which are the mental and the emotional status, so what it means, the questions that we ask, what we are focusing on, the hierarchy of values, so the personal code of what brings us to pleasure and what brings us pain, the beliefs that we have, so belief and the expectations about what should happen to make us feel fulfilled, and the references, which are the experiences and the comparisons we make. So since you can't hit a target if you don't know what it is, you have to understand what your values are. If you don't know how to act, it's because your values are not clear enough. It is not the means that you pursue, so the money, the wife, the job, but it's the values, the security, the love, the significance. Many, however, pursue the means, so the money, for example, which is why they remain dissatisfied even when they have everything. So there are 10 values that everyone seeks, and everyone has their own hierarchy of these values. What we think is the most important is what determines our actions. The 10 values are the success, the adventure, the intimacy, freedom, security, passion, love, health, comfort, and power. As you can imagine, a person who has love at the top of his value scale will act very differently from someone who has success or freedom. The source of self-sabotaging is often a conflict of these values that are too close to each other on this scale. And this happens when we do not decide our own values. So the way we take control of the values is by asking ourselves, which values must I have and add, and which one must I take away to forge the destiny I desire? You must then very carefully weigh the costs and the benefits of holding each value in a given position. And once this list is complete, you have to use it as a compass to guide your future actions. So every value then has a rule that dictates what must happen for us to feel pain or for us to feel pleasure. So if we achieve that value or not. The truth is that nothing really has to happen for us to feel happy, and that we can feel satisfied at any time if we really decide to be. So it is not the fact of achieving something that makes you happy, but it's your rule about it. We can therefore structure our rules in such a way that it is very easy to achieve our positive values and very difficult to achieve the negative ones. For example, you can consciously decide to feel love every time you express it, give it or receive it. You can also feel healthy every time you breathe clean air, every time you eat healthy, or every time you exercise. You can feel grateful when you appreciate the things that you already have, or when you hear about other people's tragedies that you weren't lucky enough to not have to face. Since we must always uphold our definition of identity, we will always return to those actions that define us, even if they are debilitating or destructive. So, to make a lasting change, we need to ask ourselves what are the values and the actions of the person we want to become, and draw up a written action plan. We tend to look what we do to define ourselves. So if we write down who we are and commit to being that person, this becomes evidence that we are or are trying to become the person we desire. Robbins then concludes by pointing out that these methodologies can be implemented to improve all the fundamental aspects of life, like emotions, the body, relationship, finance, and time. It is then up to you to put in practice what you've learned, as these are just words until you take actions, of course. And I think this is a phenomenal read. I would recommend it to anyone who wants to take a step forward on their personal growth and they want to take control of their emotions without letting the emotion take over. I love also listening to Tony Robbins, and I must say that he's able to convey the same emotions from the books he writes as much as from his presence, from his personal presence. I hope one day I will be able to attend one of his seminars and meet him in person. Until then, you can find this book in several bookshops and also online on Amazon, for example. And I must say that I absolutely recommend it, even though it is a massive 650 pages book. It is filled with explosive personal power. So if I had to rate it on a scale from 1 to 10, I would give it a solid 9. I hope you can enjoy this read as much as I did, and I will see you guys in the next video.